over here, the swing I created for an exhibition in Hampstead Heath, Together Alone, which was installed during Freeze 2020, and obviously Freeze didn't happen, but because it was outdoors in Hampstead Heath, the park, we still went ahead with it. The series over here, Irreducible Complexity, has sort of been a long-term project, or it wasn't the intention, but it turned into a long-term project because by now there's 5 different figures, and they were all completely wax, so sort of fleshy intestinal wax. And at some point, maybe a year ago, after having had them in the studio for so long, I mean, they sort of went to exhibition and traveled, and so, but at the end they came back and they were living here in the studio with me. I ended up getting a bit fed up with how much flesh there was on show, so I decided to play with the juxtaposition of covering up and adding a gold layer to some of it. This one is completely covered, and then there's another one which is half and half, and it's in a way, it's playing on the thing of blinging something up, but underneath it's obviously still the same. Yeah, and they, for example, here there's a resin, metal, wooden structure till about here. Then it's a large block of polystyrene, and then it's the wax added onto the top. And again, I would say, I mean, this one alone is probably, I think, 30 kilos by now. So I've become really aware of the weight, of the importance that it's obviously solid enough for it to stand, but also that not to make the pieces too heavy, that they become impossible to move. The traffic cones, yeah, I didn't mention this, but I started to make them in sort of as a response to social distancing, and also because at the moment I sort of noticed that there are so many temporary building sites which is sort of dug up roads with the very, orange, white traffic cones on every corner, and it sort of made me realize that such a simple thing is such an easy way to signalize the distancing of something that you're not meant to walk somewhere, you're not meant to enter. And I'm creating this family, so there's sort of a parent figure and 2 children off traffic cones, and it's sort of the internalized distancing that you sort of, that maybe over the, in the last year with the pandemic, we've all had to do and sort of look more inwards, but also how by just placing them somewhere that it instantly becomes a signalizing object that references social distancing. And my plan is to take them into central London, to Bond Street, the sort of main luxury shopping area in London, and place them outside one of the luxury shops, and sort of play again with the juxtaposition of sort of the high-end aspirations versus the internal. Another site-specific piece that I created was Continental Drift, which was part of a residency in the Bahamas, where and to be honest, that one didn't have any wax, that was solely resin, because I wanted to create this organ body-shaped, quite sort of abstract body-shaped thing, blob that was swimming in the water, or sort of floating in the water rather than swimming. And yeah, that one didn't have any wax on it, that one was resin. And it had, as you will see, because we will insert the picture of it, it had a tiny little Louis Vuitton logo. And again, sort of in reference of luxury travel versus global migration, stark differences between the two. And in a way, starting with Perishable Goods, sort of the fat block in Verbier on the mountain, which also, you know, that was sort of a fat block, or it's sort of a flesh block, held together with the gold chains, and at the very bottom on this palette, and at the very bottom of the palette was a luxury brand's designer logo. And that, the idea for Perishable Goods came at the sort of middle or halfway through my residency, when I spoke to a lady who worked at the tourist office, and I asked sort of basic questions about what Verbier is like in the summer, the difference between summer and winter. And I think she at the time said, oh, you have to imagine in the summer there's, I think, between 4,000 and 6,000 people living in Verbier, and in the winter it's 10 times that. It's sort of between 40 and 50,000 people. Again, that was obviously pre-pandemic. But, and she said, oh, you have to imagine what pressure that puts on the whole sort of structure of the village. And I instantly sort of thought of just this bulk of flesh, which then sort of as a concept became Perishable Goods. And with Perishable Goods, for me it was important that it was on a palette, because that was sort of the reference to how emergency aid is being dropped in disaster zones. It's, you know, helicopter drops on a palette of emergency aid, and that in Verbier it's not the emergency aid that is being dropped, but it's sort of the compressed luxury flesh that sort of symbolizes. And yeah, I'm going in a circle, but that was, I guess, the starting point where my work sort of started to analyze or question or deal with the different migration and sort of luxury. On the one spectrum is the luxury travel, and on the other spectrum is the need to leave a disaster zone, for example. I also created, again, that was a piece of it, no wax. I created a site-specific installation in Morocco called, what was it called? My Crib. My Crib, yeah. And My Crib is a sort of temporary shelter hut that I built sort of, 50 meters away from the beach. And I built it with found materials, lots of wood, there was some rope, again some gold chains and things to sort of bling it up. But the main element of My Crib are these plastic laundry bags, right? I got a plastic laundry bag here. So the very well-known plastic laundry bags, and which I guess at some point everyone has come across one, and they're quite basic quality, but in some way they sort of do their job of quickly being able to move something from one place to another. And for My Crib, I purchased a lot of plastic laundry bags in sort of 3 different sizes. But what they did have, rather than the very sort of recognizable striped pattern, they had the logo of a very well-known Italian designer brand. And what I've then done was I cut them up and sort of restitched them into different almost what do you call it? Long sheets, almost like a tent sheet, sort of the base sheets of things. So I created, I think in total 4 or 5 of them, but still left the handle on them, or sometimes the zipper, so that it was still recognizable that it was the plastic laundry bags. But obviously mine were trying to be something else. They were trying to be a very well-known Italian designer house bag. So yeah, My Crib was this installation of trying to build this temporary shelter hut. And the name My Crib comes from correct me if I'm wrong, it was an MTV program which was called I Show You My Crib, or Come to My Crib, where predominantly American musicians would open up their houses to sort of show off their collection of cars, which then triggered another series which was called Pimp My Ride. Not sure if that's connected, but yeah. So it was a series, I guess, started in the early 90s, mid 90s, called My Crib, Show You My Crib, where musicians would open up their houses, show their collection of trainers, jewelry, what the house looked like, you know, the indoor pool, and sort of showing off. And so my Italian luxury designer wanting to be something else was obviously working with the very cheap sort of plastic fake bags that want to be something else. And again, that also takes into account the sort of the dreams and aspirations of migration, of wanting to go somewhere else for a better life, for a more, you know, for a stabler life, or for economic reasons, but the sort of desire for something else, which I guess in a way goes full circle with what I guess it became a long-term project called Burdens of Excess, which is a body of work I started many years ago, I want to say 15 years ago, where I deconstructed, and to be honest, it was sort of started as an accident, almost working at home, but I deconstructed one of my own very beloved Louis Vuitton handbags, and I deconstructed it to the point where I left the zipper at the top and the base, so almost metaphorically I took off the sort of leather sides, almost like skinning the animal, because obviously the leather is a dead animal, or from a dead animal, and skinning the sides, and then remodeled in the shape of the bag what would be inside of, say, the animal, in the shape of the bag, and created these fleshy, intestine-looking accessories, not bags, shoes, hats, and that resulted in a solo show at Gosford in Los Angeles, where I was showing it in 2013 as an installation that played with the elements of a luxury boutique. So I turned the entire gallery into a luxury boutique and played with the codes of a luxury boutique by we painted the walls a sort of a charcoal dark grey, almost black, and the floor was a glittery sort of metallic, quite seductive, what do you call it? Flooring. And then again, playing with the sort of visual codes of a luxury boutique, it was plinths or pedestals with mirrored surfaces and then glass cubes around it, with these sort of deconstructed luxury accessories and the different items. But on first view, because of the cues that it took from a luxury boutique, it looked very seductive and very precious and exclusive. And because the gallery was located on Melrose Avenue, where a lot of luxury shops are, it was interesting to see when people walked in who didn't realize they were going to see an art exhibition, but just thought it was a new shop opening, because only when they got closer to the actual objects did they realize that no, it's not the latest edition of Louis Vuitton or, you know, Celine bags or Alexander McQueen, but it's actually something that has taken on a complete new form. Why are we talking about this? There was a reason I wanted to talk about long-term projects. How migration versus luxury travel, and how, in a way, burdens of excess, with deconstructing and playing with the sort of, and being also really fascinated with how the emotional reasons behind consumerism. Why do we shop? What do we desire? Why do we desire, or, you know, talking for myself, why do I desire a luxury handbag more than a cheap high street brand one? And I sort of, that has been a 10-year sort of analysis through my work, the connections of consumerism and the emotional connection with things. And in a way, I not narrowed it down, but I sort of, for myself, created this analysis that in a way we shop because we desperately want to be part of a tribe. And that over the last maybe 100 years, with the decline on people going to church or following religion, how it used to be, 200 years ago or 100 years ago, how fashion houses have almost taken over the status of religion for some people, not everyone, for some people, and how the different designers that are heading the different fashion houses, even though they're all owned by, 3 different companies, but how you almost as a consumer become a disciple of following. So if Kim Jones moves from one fashion house to another, you then almost follow with him because you're a loyal disciple. So I sort of made this analysis that in a way is just we desperately crave being part of a tribe, and the desperately craving being part of a tribe then goes further back, that in a way we're recraving our mother's love, that symbiotic cycle.